College football 25 is almost here. And let me tell you, I've got a little bit of a problem. No, the game looks great. Don't have any issues with that. It's this top 25 toughest places to play. I don't know where they came up with this list, but I'm going to give you my top 10, and I'm going to base it off a few things. You guys let me know in the comments. Did I get this right? Am I closer? And let me know. What are your top 10 toughest places to play? Let's get right to it. Here you have it. College football 25's toughest places to play. And before we get into the top 10, I am just going to talk about 11 through 25 as a whole and just give you some things that have kind of popped out at me. The biggest one for me is Auburn. They are 12-10 in the last 3 years. To be a tough place to play, you got to win at home. And they've lost 10 times in 3 years. Okay, we're not going to talk about the past history. Okay, Cam Newton winning a title was 14 years ago. We need to move on. You were the stepchild in Alabama, and the biggest game you have at home is when Alabama comes into town, okay? But they should not be over Texas. They should not be over Michigan, as much as that pains me to say, all right? And let's talk about Michigan for just a second. They haven't lost a game at home in 3 years. They pack out 100K plus every home game. It's extremely loud, and they're reigning national champions. Having them at 16 is an absolute joke. Okay, I'm an Ohio State fan. I want to throw up, but I have to call it how I see it. Having them this low is unbelievable. Texas, with the team that they got coming, and they were in the playoff last year, I would have expected to see them a lot higher on this list. I did find it ironic or kind of weird, again, of having South Carolina at 15. I mean, they have not been all that good the last few years, okay, because of Spencer Rattler, but that's about it. And I'm not going to lie, as much as I think that Tennessee fans are obnoxiously annoying, having them at 13 is kind of a slap in the face as well. I definitely think that they should be higher. Okay, but like I said, I know I'm gonna have some people in the comments absolutely roast me, but again, man, facts are facts. You have to win at home, and somebody like Auburn, who's 12-10, I don't want to hear you complain. So here's the top 10. You got Texas A&M at 1, Alabama at 2, LSU at 3, Ohio State at 4, Georgia at 5, Penn State at 6, Wisconsin at 7, Oklahoma at 8, Florida State at 9, and Florida at 10. There's some of these who I definitely think should be on the list. There's some people that I think they should be higher. And then there's some that I don't even think should be on there at all and should be much lower on this list. Now I'm getting into my top 10, and I'm basing this off a few things. I'm looking at home record, I'm looking at attendance, I'm looking at the size of the stadium, and I'm looking at how loud does this place really get. These are the things, in my opinion, that make it a tough place to play. Texas was absolutely disrespected by EA. They're one of the biggest stadiums in the country, sitting at 8. They have only lost 4 games in the last 3 years at home, and they were a playoff team, and chances are they're going to be a playoff team in 2025. Clemson did surprise me here. They've only lost 2 games at home in the last 3 years, and they are in the top 10 most loudest stadiums in the country, and they are one of the smaller stadiums when you look at the grand scheme of the big football programs across the country, so I had to put them at 9. I know this is going to shock a lot of people here, but I've got Texas A&M at 8 when EA had them at 1, and it's no disrespect to this program at all. They've got one of the biggest stadiums in the country, and the 12th man gives them one of the loudest in the country as well, but they lost 5 games at home in the last 3 years, and we're really splitting the hairs here. All of these programs are incredible in their own right, but I had to put them at 8. I've got Penn State at 7. The whiteout to me is one of the most iconic things in college football. They're the second biggest stadium in the country, and they're in the top 5 for being one of the loudest stadiums in the country as well. They've lost 4 games at home, and that's why I've got them at 7. But I can tell you the Mo Bamba thing at the beginning of this Michigan game will forever be one of the greatest clips in college football.
I've got Tennessee at 6, and I'm not going to lie, I downplayed them for many years because they weren't playing well. But in the last 3, they've really turned it around. They have a huge win against Alabama. And if we're going with just entrance and stadium experience, they are probably number 1. I was thoroughly impressed when I saw a lot of this. They are the number 6 biggest stadium in the country, and they have the loudest sound coming out of a stadium in college football history. And I really think with time, if they become more consistent, they're going to be in the top 3 for sure. We've got Ohio State at number 5. Nothing gets more consistent than Ohio Stadium. They're the number 3 biggest stadium in the country, and they're consistently in the top 10 for being one of the loudest. They've also got cool experiences like Script, Ohio, and one of the best bands in the country. But fact of the matter is they've lost 2 games at home, which does not seem like a lot. But once we get into this top 4, we're really cutting it close. I've got Georgia at 4, and we're starting to get to a point that very little separates this top 4. Georgia has been perfect in the last 3 years. They have won national titles as well, but they are one of the smaller stadiums in this group, and they are in the top 20, not the top 10 for being one of the loudest. But they provide one of the best stadium experiences, very similar to a Tennessee, and this is why I have them at 4. It just adds another layer of home field advantage that not a lot of other schools have. I've got LSU at 3, and I'm not going to lie, when EA first put them up this high, I was kind of thrown off, but they deserve this ranking. They are number 5 in the country in terms of size of the stadium. They max out the stadium every single home game, and they've had registered earthquakes at the stadium numerous times, like the one that they had in 2022 when they upset Alabama. I also think what makes this stadium much more intimidating is that the stands are practically sitting on top of the field. This gives an extra layer there, and I see why LSU has only lost 3 home games in the last 3 years. This one pains me more than anything, putting Michigan up at number 2, but I will say I have to give credit where credit is due, and I thought that EA absolutely snubbed them, having them so far down on their list. This is the biggest stadium in the country, sitting at 107,000 people. They are undefeated at home. They are reigning national champions, and I'm not gonna lie, the Mr. Brightside thing that they do at the stadium is pretty cool too. They deserve this number 2 spot. I cannot believe they were that low. And sitting at number 1, we are giving this to Alabama. They are the definition of consistency. They have only lost 1 game at home in the last 3 years. And if we go beyond that, they've probably only lost 2 or 3 in the last 6. They are the 7th biggest stadium in the country, sitting at 101,821. And they also sit in the top 10 for being one of the loudest. I'm curious to see, without Nick Saban being there, if the stadium loses any of that power that they've had over the last 10 or 12 years, but we will see. What do you guys think of this top 10? Let me know in the comments, and we will catch you guys in the next video.